Hey guys, it's Frederik from the FWX podcast. I want to keep talking about certain specific words and terminology when it comes to storytelling in stories that we see nowadays. And there is a term that we use for things that we need to get in a story: McGuffins. And that's what I want to talk about next. But before I do that, you can go ahead and like this video if you like to. You can also subscribe to the channel for more of this kind of content. You can also comment away in the comment section below. You can also share this with friends and family and people at work or just here online as well. Alright, let's start talking about McGuffins. And in case you don't know exactly what that is, I'll give you the definition about what a McGuffin exactly is. But before I do, one last thing when it comes to the disclaimer: I'm not a native English speaker, so if I occasionally flub a word, that is perfectly normal. Alright? Okay, let's go for this. So, a McGuffin, or Macguffin, is, and here's a definition, is an object, device, or event that is necessary to the plot and the motivation of the characters, but insignificant, unimportant, or irrelevant in itself. So it's basically something that becomes important, so you can get ahead. And this is often used when it comes to enemies. For instance, I've talked a ton about superheroes. These days, Marvel seems to have really found itself again, depending on your perspective. And one of the things that they have done with their previous phases is the implementation of McGuffins. And there's no bigger one that they have done than these ones. The Infinity Stones, and also the Infinity Gauntlet. And obviously, if you have seen those movies, you know where those pop up, but I'm gonna mention those in a moment, just for you to be sure about when things happen. Also, this also tells the story of the big enemy in the MCU, and that is, of course, this guy, Thanos himself, the Mad Titan. And so, to tell the tale a bit from his side, Thanos is obviously an alien that comes from the planet Titan, and he has his own journey throughout the MCU, and that means for him protecting his home. And, well, to back up a bit with the terminology here, so oftentimes the villain doesn't think of himself as a villain. They think of themselves as a hero. And so that was the case, supposedly, with Thanos. And he was afraid that something might happen. And he proposed a plan, which we hear about in Infinity War. I got the picture right here. So, when he arrives back on Titan in this movie, he meets up with Doctor Strange, and he has a conversation with him where he talks about the fact that an apocalypse was about to happen on his planet. He had a proposal, and that was rejected. And what he had said came to pass, leading to his planet being bulldozed by whatever thing or who that did it. Because that's something we don't know. That's something we don't know exactly about that planet and how we get to see it as a barren wasteland with past those circle transportation things that he and his armies and his Black Order use. And so his journey is one of power. He needs the power to become even mightier than before. He was already quite the fighter. We do get to see that scene also in Infinity War at the very beginning, where he, with only one Infinity Stone, lays waste to the Hulk and takes him out, knocking him out. And that's where everything starts for him, especially in that movie, because as I said before, in the different phases up until that point, we get to see what exactly these McGuffins, these stones, the Infinity Stones, and the Gauntlet also have to do with Thanos. And of course, this all stems from the comics as well. So, in the comics, something similar happens that we get to see on the big screen with the Avengers movies. With some differences, of course, because adaptations need to stand on their own. And they did that well for a couple of phases. And now we're getting a bit of a resurgence when it comes to Marvel again. I've mentioned in past episodes of the FWX podcast about the more recent works that Marvel has put out, like for instance the Amazing Thunderbolts movie. And I know people like to say, oh, that's the new Avengers. Yeah, sure. Also, they have one movie left that I have to see for myself, and that is the Fantastic Four movie. And when I get to see that, there will also be an episode about that. Okay. So, as we've seen in the different phases before in the MCU, people start to collect the Infinity Stones, and I'm not gonna go into the most minute detail here, but basically it all starts to happen at the very beginning with Loki arriving on Earth, and up until the defeat of Thanos in Endgame. That's this one right here. And obviously, especially in Infinity War and in Endgame, we also get to see how the Gauntlet works, which is something that he obtains himself, Thanos. Think of it a little bit as a video game. Like, in order to kill somebody, you first need a weapon. And for Thanos, he kind of doesn't need any weapon because he's such a tough big guy that can take not just hordes of people or soldiers or heroes out, he can take out monsters like the Hulk, for instance. Well, because Thanos sees the Hulk as a monster. But as it is explained in those movies, he has had that plan for a long while. And that's why he sent Loki initially to Earth in that first Avengers movie. And here's where we get to see one of those stones already, although we don't really know about it yet. And that is the Mind Stone that is stuck in the scepter that Loki has. I don't have a picture of Loki, unfortunately. Because at that point, also, obviously a fan favorite for many people, Loki, given the arc that he has had so far and what's yet to come from him, because we're likely to see him in the Secret Wars and Doomsday movies, and I'm pretty excited about that myself. And so Obviously, as I said, all over phase 1, 2, 3, we get hints of the Infinity Stones and the Gauntlet 2, finally in Infinity War, as it has been assembled by the dwarves of Nidavellir. And yeah, so I wanted to make this sure for you guys that also this is part basically of something that you do in a story, is that you have to sell it to other people, and so for that you use exposition. That is the necessary important information for everything to go forward, and you do that with something like a McGuffin, for instance. That's how you do a smart exposition. And so the Infinity Stones and the Gauntlet definitely do that, and because that drives the characters forward. And well, you can see in the different kind of movies where all of these pop up. For instance, I mentioned the Mind Stone. Well, it's a bit different in this picture because this is from the comics, but in the MCU they kind of they mixed up the colors. For instance, the Mind Stone here is blue, but in the MCU it is the yellow one, because in the second Avengers movie, in Age of Ultron, we also get to see one, specifically the Mind Stone, when Vision is born, because it's stuck in his forehead. Another person that ends up having the Mind Stone, especially in the comics, is a character we saw recently, or somewhat recently, with Adam Warlock, who ends up having it on his forehead as well, so he can use it. And the stones can do different things, which allows them to be used as a weapon, in combination, of course, with the gauntlet itself. Because, as you can see, obviously on this picture, they can be fitted onto the fingers, and then also the back of the hand, and on the thumb. Right there. And so that's a whole lot about the Infinity Stones being McGuffins, and that's what drives the plot forward in the MCU movies phase 1 to 3. Of course, this is also part of the evolution of the heroes, because we do get those Avengers movies, of course, with how they are created. And obviously, one of the things you need to consider here too is that some characters, when it came to the MCU, couldn't be used from the very start. For instance, it took years because of certain rights not being with Marvel for the moment, that it took Spider-Man up until Captain America Civil War to premiere in, where we first got to see him in a very interesting way too, by the way. And yeah, I feel like I've talked a lot about Marvel for now. There is another franchise I want to mention that uses McGuffins a lot. So, this other franchise is an absolute juggernaut in itself. And that's, of course, this one. These are the Harry Potter books for those who see these versions. I read all the books myself too, although in a different cover art. In fact, I've got them on my boekenplank is the word we use in Dutch. And, well, all the names basically of the books with Harry Potter mention one of those McGuffins. Starting with the Sorcerer's Stone, which is that thing that Nicholas Flamel made for someone to become powerful in a way, become immortal specifically, or turn things to gold. So that drives that story forward. The definition says that it's mostly a device or an object. I think also that can be attuned to also being a place or a person too. Obviously, I'm going to mention the very thing at the end of the books that we get to know about in the movies too. Because, again, like I said, Marvel has adapted their comic books for a long time inside the MCU. They did the same with Harry Potter, of course. And I say place because the Chamber of Secrets is a place, not a thing. But there's also another thing that is used here, and that is Tom Riddle's diary that leads Harry to the Chamber of Secrets. And I also said person because the third book and movie, The Prisoner of Azkaban, obviously refers to Sirius Black, who, as most of you will know, is Harry Potter's godfather, who should have looked over him but was actually framed as a killer, as a murderer. But then again, they also use another McGuffin here, and that is a time turner to switch everything back to, well, not switch, to turn time, literally. So, by the end of the movie, and I probably should have given you a massive spoiler alert at the very beginning, but I'll give it right here in case someone has not seen the movies or has read the books. Obviously, after number 3 comes number 4, which is the Goblet of Fire in Harry Potter's case, which is the ultimate prize in the fourth book and movie, because it actually refers to the thing, of course. I'm trying to think, what is the object? Because there's also an object in this one where Harry actually gets the... Or maybe I'll use this one conceptual wise. For instance, in Goblet of Fire, in the book and in the movie, we first get to hear those 3 unforgivables, which is how to torture, kill, and manipulate people. Because that's important going forward, of course, and it gives you obviously some foreshadowing, which is another term I will mention and have been mentioning for some time as well, where you set something up to mean something that is going to happen later. For instance, the kill part, the Avada Kedavra curse, which is used at the very end of that book and movie to kill Cedric Diggory, which is Harry's first conscious time hearing that phrase, hearing that curse. And I say like that because he was obviously the first person to have had that happen upon him and not die. I said place, I said person. Maybe it can also be an organization, because obviously number 5 is Order of the Phoenix, meaning a group or an organization. that is where everything leads to, or is about, because the Order is obviously everyone that fought against Voldemort in an organization. I'm trying to think if there was also maybe a device. Maybe the Felix Felicis could be seen as another McGuffin here. You know, the little bottle that Harry takes so he can go get answers from Slughorn. No, my bad. That's not in this one. That's in the next book and movie. In... what was the bloody name again? No, just a Half-Blood Prince, my bad. But obviously that is the one in this book and movie. In the sixth one, the book of the Half-Blood Prince, obviously referring to Snape in his younger years, to get through all his years in school while being tormented by Harry's father, James. And obviously we also get the first mention here of the Horcruxes, which becomes a huge thing throughout the whole series. You could basically see the Horcruxes as the Infinity Stones of the Harry Potter book series and the movie series, because obviously those already find their way at the very start, and that also goes in conjecture. I mentioned the wrong word there. Anyway, what I mean is the Horcruxes, there's a pursuit towards them, literally, when Harry, Hermione, and Ron start to hunt for the Horcruxes. And obviously that is at the very beginning of the Deathly Hallows books and movies, which is yet another MacGuffin that is used to further the plot along and have our heroes evolve in some way or be able to get it. Like I said before, think of it like a video game. Like, what do you need going up against someone more powerful than you? You need to get to a certain point. You need to level up, basically. And obviously the Deathly Hallows also, like the Horcruxes, are very early in, starting in the first book and movie with the introduction of the invisibility cloak that Harry gets from a Dumbledore, who got it originally from his father, from James, which was his heir, right? Literally, even. Because, of course, Harry learns that he is descendant of the Peverell family. So it's literally his. It is literally his. And yeah, I feel like there's obviously more. I can mention all the Horcruxes, of course, which is, for instance, the very one that we first know about is that diary of Tom Riddle, aka Voldemort, in the Chamber of Secrets. That's this one, of course. I'll show it a bit closer. But Harry doesn't know that at the time, of course. Obviously, it's also mentioned in the Deathly Hallows eventually that Harry all this time has been carrying a Horcrux inside him, but didn't know about it. But maybe it's a suspicion. Obviously, that's not literally written, but Who knows? Obviously, if you've seen the books, or if you've read the books, or you have, I'm gonna rephrase, if you have read the books or seen the movies, you know a lot about this one. And when I occasionally say supposed to or alleged or something like that when it comes to Harry Potter, that's because I do read a lot of fan fiction. And they often take some liberties with what's happening. Okay, I feel like I've told you enough about this concept of the McGuffin. Obviously, there are more examples, but these are, I think, the most well known ones. And I feel I can wrap this up right here. So, thank you for listening and watching to me explain the concept of the McGuffins to you. So, before I go, you can like this video, you can subscribe to the channel, you can also share this with friends and family and people at work or just here online. You can also type away in the comment section if you like, but do keep it friendly and polite. Also, you can follow me on social media if you like to do that, and I will see you hopefully in the next video of the FWX podcast. I've been Frederik, and I will see you in the next video.